Right, I believe I should be live now. Check, 1, 2, check, check. Yep, looks like I'm live. Got a whole new setup here for streaming, so let's see. It looks okay. Okay. All right. I'm doing this a little bit of a different way now. Not only do I have my new camera, so I kind of had to reset up my lighting and all of that, but I'm running it straight from OBS. So, hello, a couple people here, cool. I'm running everything straight from OBS now, so we'll see how it goes. I don't have internet browser open or anything for this. Seems okay. Streaming always tends to be a little bit of a strain on my computer. But on the screen you'll see I've got up the tabs for one of these solos. In fact, I have them all laid out here. And I'm just going to kind of go a little more into depth in some of these, answer any questions anyone might have. If you have questions on specific solos, let me know. Also, let me know how my voice is volume-wise. I have a tendency to talk really quietly when I'm going live. It's something I had to work on when I was filming videos first too, like trying to make sure I talk more loudly. So let me just play some guitar. I should be hearing that too. As I go along, if things are unbalanced, let me know. One other thing here, and I'll mention this a few times, I made a pinned comment too. If you'd like PDFs for any of these, or PDFs or the guitar profiles, I have them for every single one of these solos. So I transcribed all of these. So if you'd like one of those, $2 in the super chats here if you want. And you can pick any one you want. And I'll make a note of it if that happens, who it is. And I'll send you an email with the PDF and the Guitar Pro if you kind of want to dig into these deeper. Obviously, I didn't make any money off of doing any of these solos. It's more just for the channel in general. And in fact, most of these videos were unmonetized. They got copyright strikes, which I kind of expected. That's just the name of the game when I do these sort of analysis things. But if you want to help me out and you want to get tabs for these, you can send me a couple dollars and I'll send some tabs your way. So the first one I got up here is the Accolade. I'm kind of going to go through these in order, unless people have questions about specific solos. Let me know. If there's like, hey, I really want to see what you did on this specific solo. Just kind of go through these in order. Talk about the process of learning these, transcribing them, maybe some more of the theory behind them. Which software is this? This is Guitar Pro 8. Guitar Pro is kind of the standard for transcribing or writing out rock-based music. So metal, rock, all that kind of stuff. You can get really specific on the guitar. I mean, it's called Guitar Pro, obviously. Really specific on the guitar techniques, right? You can do things like thumping and slapping and tapping and popping, and you can put in left-hand fingerings and right-hand fingerings and pick strokes and all that kind of stuff. So I actually write into Guitar Pro fairly often too, but I also use it for tabbing out anything in any of my videos. It's all done on Guitar Pro. I think Guitar Pro is like $80 just to pay for it outright. So it's a lot less expensive than some of the more fancy notation softwares, which I used Sibelius for a long time, which is more focused on orchestral music and things like that. And it's very nice for that kind of thing. But for guitar, this is actually much better using Guitar Pro. So I'm going to watch my own stream here. I have it on my phone. notation softwares, which looks pretty good. I'm just trying to make sure everything's synced. I got a new capture card as well, an actual nice, fancy Elgato Camlink capture card for streaming, because I'd like to do some more of this in the future. I always had issues in the past of things not syncing up, and some of that had to do with my old camera. Now, obviously, my new camera has a clean HDMI out, and it just looks better in general. So it should, hopefully, if this goes well, I can live stream more easily. It's always such a pain to set this up because I don't live stream every day like a Twitch streamer or something, which I won't end up ever doing that because my life is way too busy. But it was just always awkward to stream, and that's why I kind of haven't done it in a long time. It's just a pain to set all this stuff up, and it's hard on my computer and all that. I will try later. If it works, I'll try to open up my DAW if my computer decides that that's not too much work for it. I'll open up my DAW and maybe talk a little bit about the tone from like one of these solos, you know, if people are interested in that. But the first solo that I did was the Accolade II. And as I mentioned in my video, some of these solos most of these were picked out by my followers on Discord or in YouTube comments. And then a few of them I picked out myself. This one was picked out on the Discord channel by someone. I don't remember exactly who. And it was cool because I wanted to do a Symphony X solo. I actually hadn't covered a Symphony X solo before on the channel. I've talked about Symphony X in a lot of different contexts, talked about their riffs and some of the rhythms and things like that. But I never talked about Michael Romeo's lead playing, which was the reason I probably got into Symphony X to begin with, was the lead playing of Romeo, obviously. And this is a cool solo because it's not like one of his crazy shreddy solos like some of them. It's more of a kind of bluesy, different kind of solo, which I thought is really cool and kind of fun to talk about. So I have it, and I mentioned this in my video, I have it actually tabbed out in the Guitar Pro in the tuning that Romeo uses, which is D standard, so one full step down. So you can see it here. This is how Romeo would actually play it. I mean, I think there's a few fingerings that are maybe different from my version and his. But this is if you're tuned down a full step. And then this would be how I covered it in standard tuning. And it's basically the same to play it. There's no open strings or anything. Some of the stretches, you know, it's a little lower on the guitar, so they're 2 frets wider or whatever. But I really like this solo. This is a really fun one to play. And, you know, as I mentioned, a little different from kind of what people think of with Romeo. They think of like the Yngwie Malmsteen neoclassical stuff. Haven't played this in a long time. Are you a musician or a prog enthusiast guitarist? I'm a musician. I actually consider myself, I think of myself maybe even more as like a composer and writer now than I do as a guitar player, but guitar playing has been my main thing for a long time. So if you're new here on this channel, I haven't checked anything out, go check out some of my other videos. I actually don't do guitar specific videos most of the time. It's usually lessons related to composition and theory, as well as a lot of my own original music. But there are guitar-based things too, because I'm a guitar player. I did a couple other series besides this 10 solos in 10 days. I did 10 rhythms in 10 days a few years ago, and I also did 10 riffs in 10 days, which are both interesting studies into some different kinds of things beyond just guitar, the guitar shredding. So yeah, if check out the rest of my channel, see if you like it. I think I'm doing something a little bit different and interesting here. At least it's kind of my goal. So I'm going to keep this live up on my phone just so I can monitor how everything's syncing up. So yeah, if check out my channel. It's working just fine. I haven't played any of these solos for a long time. In fact, I covered this one. It's one of the first ones I covered. I recorded my cover back in September. So what is that, like 6 months ago? I relearned some of the parts to film my lesson, but I'm not going to play through all these solos live because you don't want to hear me try to relearn them on the fly. I'll talk about some of the specific riffs and some of the technical issues that came into playing these solos, because it might be interesting for you guitarists to be like, okay, which parts were really hard to learn, which things presented a real challenge, and what was easier to do. This big lick here in this first couple bars, you can see here, this was definitely the hardest part of this solo for me to play, and I worked out a kind of weird left hand fingering, which I think is different from what Romeo actually does. For me, a lot of times I'll go for a more awkward left hand fingering if it makes the picking easier. That's just been my kind of go-to. So if you look at this measure, for example, this is kind of a repeating pedal point pattern, like a very classical type of thing where you're going up to the same note over and over again. That kind of thing. And you could put this first note, which I have on the 11th fret of the B string, you could put that on the G string. Which isn't too bad, actually. It feels pretty good. But it's more string crossing if you do that. So if I put that 11th fret, stretch out a little bit more, and put it on the B string, all of a sudden I only have to cross strings one time in this pattern instead of twice. So it's going to make it a little bit more consistent and easier to pick. So I found a lot of the challenge with really technical playing, if you're doing a lot of picking, is the right hand. That's the really hard part for a lot of this stuff. So a lot of times I'll work out these ways that I think work better for the right hand, even if it means that my left hand does some really bizarre stuff. So I'll kind of go through this lick slowly. I'm kind of sight reading it now, but... really like this lick overall. And I talked about it in my lesson where you have a lot of these blues pentatonic sort of licks, and then you have this classical pedal point stuff, and it's a combination of natural minor as well as Dorian. So you have, for example, that's all natural minor, and then when it slides down, Dorian. Hold on. I was just looking at I had this on another screen here. I realized we might be getting some... I don't want you guys to have to watch a bunch of ads as I'm live streaming. I wonder if I can change that here. Okay. I'm changing it so that there'll be less ads. I don't want people to have to kind of jump in and out. I got an ad while I was watching myself on my phone. Anyway, if people have questions about this stuff, let me know, but I'm just kind of keep talking. So you have so many of these bluesy ideas. And then it's right into classical stuff. Really like all those licks. That last lick, straight up bluesy stuff. And there's a lot of bar work in here too, which is something Romeo does all the time. I'm a big fan of vibrato with the whammy bar, and as well as like a lot of these scoops and bends, all that stuff. Really beautiful melodic ideas, and this is one of the reasons I love this solo a lot, is it has some cool flashy licks, but it has that combination with the more melodic ideas too, which is really fun. I love doing these kind of solos where you kind of get a break from the shredding. There's a few solos in here that were more really shreddy. I think specifically the Persephone solo which is kind of like shred the entire time, which is fun. But it's nice to get some breaks and play some more melodic ideas and kind of get yourself ready for the next flashy lick that comes in. And if people are interested about the tone, for I think maybe 4 of these solos, I used Neural DSP plugin. I used Nolly, I believe, on all of them. And then the rest of the solos were done with my Kemper, which I'm playing through right now. This is kind of my go-to lead tone. It's a profile of a Mesa Boogie Mark V. I think it sounds really nice, you know, especially with this guitar. And this is what I used on at least 3 or 4 of the solos. I used this exact profile. I used a couple others as well, like a profile of a 5150 for the Revocation stuff, because I know Dave Davison uses that. I wasn't really trying to match the original tones that much, because this was more focused on teaching the solos. I'm not someone who is like crazy nerdy on the tone stuff like some people. I just want to find sounds that work well for me and kind of go from there. You know, that's just how I am. I don't know. I've never really been someone who tweaks tones for like hours and hours. I kind of want things that work and just go from there and get back to actually, you know, making music. So with all of these solos, it's like find a tone that's good, ones that I know work well for me and my playing and that fit the song, and go from there. And as far as how I actually recorded these solos, I'll talk more about it later when I pull up. Hopefully I can pull up my DAW and show the tone and how I kind of went about recording it. But most of these, I got the original audio for the song and then split out the parts with an AI tool, and then found where the guitar solo was and brought it way down, or tried to get rid of it from the original recording. So I was essentially playing over backing tracks for these songs. There's like a tiny bit of the original solo in the background, but by kind of cutting out those frequencies where the normal guitar solo is sitting really loud and boosting my guitar in that area and having my guitar be a little bit louder, makes it sound like I'm playing over a backing track. I didn't want to have the original guitar solo underneath, like where you could hear it. I think that's always kind of weird when you watch a cover and you can hear like as much of the original solo as the person who's covering it. Also, it makes it easier to cover too, because if you do it the other way where you have the original guitarist solo there, every single time you're slightly off from the original guitarist, you hear it like crazy. You know, it's like if you speed up on one run, all of a sudden that's like phased out with the original guitarist. So it's nice to have more of this backing track approach. I mean, sometimes I would actually make backing tracks for covers. In this case, that was just way too much work for, you know, doing 10 solos. So I decided just to do the AI kind of thing and scoop out the original solo so that you could hear mine a little bit better. Yeah, this Symphony X solo is cool. And this final lick is a really common Michael Romeo sort of thing. So it takes an arpeggio, in this case a G7. He does it on one string. All right, so it's all on one string, and he's going to work his way down on one string. Something like that, right? Not that warmed up. That idea, very cool. Something you'll find in a lot of other Romeo solos. One that pops into my head right away is one solo from the Damnation game. I think it's like that. So it's a E major arpeggio. But it goes up kind of on one string like that. That sort of sound. Really hard to do. There's a lot of tracking involved with that kind of thing. But this is a great little lick that leads into the melodic part of the solo, which is definitely my favorite part of the solo. Very beautiful and works through the chord changes that are happening here perfectly. So that's the Symphony X solo. As I mentioned earlier, if you want to get some of these tabs, I have the guitar profiles and PDFs for all of these. $2 if you want to send me a super chat. I'll send you whatever solo you'd like in Guitar Pro and PDF. Any support is obviously greatly appreciated. But I'm going to kind of just keep going through these solos. So the next ones I did were these solos from Kigios The Source, Dream the Dead. And these are pretty short solos. I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do originally. This was another song that was requested to me on my Discord channel. I decided to do all three of the solos in this song because they're all pretty short. I mean, the last one's a little longer. But instead of just doing the first solo, I decided to do all three because they kind of relate to each other. They're all over essentially the same chord progression. I think the third solo has like a slightly different progression here and there, but it's basically all over the same progression. Kind of an interesting key, or like E flat minor, very unusual for guitar, but fun to play. I really like this first solo, especially. It kind of has everything, right? You can see it all here at once. You have, let me see, make sure it's all on the screen here. Make sure my guitar is not in the way. No, it looks pretty good. All right. I can actually full screen myself here too if I need to. So if people want more close-up looks of my playing or certain parts, let me know and I can go to the full screen version. I'll leave the tab up for now though. So there's all these melodic ideas at the beginning of the solo, the first half, and then this big shreddy runs into the second half, including these monster string skipping tapping licks, which I spent quite a bit of time talking about in my lesson. It's a really cool idea. I'll dive slightly more into that here. So I have not played this in a while, but I really enjoy that first melodic section. So many cool ideas, especially this. Bend, slide, bend, and then back. And you get some great arpeggio ideas, some major 7 arpeggio. G flat major 7. And then some classic kind of 3 upper string shredding parts. And then we slide up and get the big tapping lick. You're going to see what it's actually like for me trying to play this stuff. When I'm doing the covers, I've practiced this for a while, and it's, a couple of the, maybe like a dozen takes till I figure out which one is the best. I don't remember which take this was that I actually used for my cover. Might have been the last one. It's a really interesting thing when you're recording. If anyone who's recorded can maybe, especially doing a cover or trying to do something in one take, can probably attest to this. But you'll end up doing, a couple dozen takes. And half the time I found the last take ends up being the best because I've, kind of spent some time doing it. But also sometimes you get in your head, and when you listen back to it later, one of the first couple takes ends up being best. Like, I'll do 20 takes of a difficult solo, and once I go back, I realize, the fourth one, is the best version I did. Even though I thought, I'm kind of getting better as it goes along. But there's some kind of mental thing when you're first going for it that sometimes that's the best. It's a very interesting thing that happens when you're recording. Obviously, it's different if I'm recording a song and I'm kind of making sure I have the best takes possible and punching in. And oh, sorry, my camera went off. I thought I had it set to not shut off, but how long has it been? It's been about half an hour. Okay. I thought I had it set to not shut off auto. I'll have to mess with that. Once again, new camera, new setup. Just trying to figure all of that out. There must be a setting in there. First is best and you forgot to hit record. Yeah, that's true. You're right. The best take is the one that you forget to press record on. I've had that happen plenty of times too. Actually, the best take is right before you start recording. And then as soon as you get the red light syndrome of the recording on, then you make tons of mistakes. It happens when you're just recording. It also happens when you're filming videos. It was interesting doing covers like this where I'm recording and filming at the same time, right? I'm doing the video and audio at the same time, because it feels like a ton of pressure. It almost feels like playing live, because I've played live a lot throughout my sort of musical career. And there's this feeling, is like a nervous feeling no matter how many times you play live. There's a little bit of nerves and adrenaline that happens when you're playing live. And it kind of simulates that when you're recording with the camera on and all of the lights. Because I'm sitting in here like this, and I've got like multiple lights all beaming down on me, and you get the red light syndrome and the camera is right in front of you. It feels very similar to playing live. It's a interesting way to replicate that feeling. I think if I was going to like rehearse for a big tour with difficult music, I might like, you know, set up all my lights and turn my camera on just to sort of simulate that sort of nervous feeling of playing live. Would be an interesting thing to try out. Next time I have to prep for some shows, maybe I'll do that. So anyway, the big tapping licks in this solo, and then in the last solo, maybe I'll take a look at that one more. You see these massive tapping licks. It's essentially pentatonic scales played 4 notes per string. So you have normally a pentatonic scale, right? 2 notes per string sort of idea, and those kind of things are hard to play quickly. There's a lot of great pentatonic licks you can do with that, and learning your pentatonic scales is very important. But you can play them 4 notes per string by stretching out your left hand to get a 3rd note, and then doing the 4th note with the tap. So essentially you can skip over, instead of doing, I can go and start to play these pentatonic scales with these big tapping patterns. That sort of sound, which is really nice. And I can sequence them different ways. I can go up, like, what does it do in this actual solo? It kind of goes up, back down, back up again. That kind of thing. And that shape there is actually one I use a lot. You're starting on the root note of the minor pentatonic. In this case, this is what? G sharp minor or A flat minor. It's a shape I'll use fairly often. There's a lick in the solo from my song, The Great Stereopticon, where it goes. Kind of uses the beginning of this pattern. I can't remember exactly. Yeah, there it is. Yeah. Something like that. Haven't done that in a long time. But these big, massive licks, it's kind of a good way to get the effect of like a big sweeping lick without actually sweeping. It gives you a similar sort of vibe if you can move up more than 2 octaves at a time really quickly. Like doing a big sweep like that. If I do the string skip pentatonic stuff, kind of has the same feel to it in a way. You can take these through different pentatonic shapes. So I'm going to do this in... What am I in? I'm going to do this in E minor because it'll be easier for me to... I can move up to the next note in the pentatonic. Right. Yeah. Right. And if I want, I could add in a tap note too. Anyway, those aren't... There's certain shapes of those that I actually use myself a lot. I should probably run through some of the other ones myself just to kind of used to how they feel. But that's really fun solo, and it has like this big Yngwie Malmsteen style pattern here, this 6-note sequence. So right out of the tapping lick, it goes into the big picking lick. Really fun pattern, one that I use myself fairly often, so this wasn't too hard of a lick to kind of throw out. Some of this pentatonic stuff at the end was cool. I'm going to try to pull up my DAW because this would be a good one to talk about the tone a little bit. We'll see how this goes. I'll talk a little bit about how what I'm doing, within the recording part for the tone. This is not the time to scan new plugins in Studio One. So I use Studio One. The Priestess Studio One is my DAW of choice for recording. I've used it for almost 13, 14 years at this point. So I'm really used to it. I think it's a good one. I don't think you obviously can't go wrong with a Logic or Pro Tools or Cubase, whatever. I've had a lot of success with getting some volume from the screen here once I get it open. There's not a ton of plugins on this particular session, so it shouldn't be a problem once I have it loaded up. Might be kind of interesting to look into what I did with the tone. So for this particular solo, I'm actually was using the exact profile that I've been playing through here. So nothing too crazy there. All right, so there's the... Whoa, nope. I grabbed the OBS screen. No, that's not what I went to do. There we go. Let me see where I am on the screen here. Okay, that looks fine. So you can see, I'm not going to play too much of this because I don't want to get copyright strike. I'll just kind of play bits and pieces here and there. But you have all these 3 different solos back to back. Here in my takes, guitar take 9, I guess I did on that one. Take 2 on this one, and take 20 on this one. Yeah. So that's what I was talking about earlier. Is like sometimes it's one of your first takes, like take 2, or sometimes it's your last take, take 20. That ends up being good. So I'm just gonna solo my guitar without anything on here. Let me minimize this screen a little bit. You can kind of see my plug-in chain here for this. Pretty simple, but I'll turn off the plugins and the delay and reverb. So this is just the signal that was coming in directly. Let me make sure this is coming through. I think I performed that pretty well, actually. some of these solos, you know, after the fact, looking back, I was like, ah, man, that wasn't, this part wasn't that clean, or this part wasn't that great. But I think this first solo was one of the better performed ones. And I think this tone works really well for it. So that was the main tone. And my thing with tones in general is try to get a good tone up front, and then I won't have to do too much on the back end to make it better or anything like that. So I just have a couple of really simple things, really basic EQ on this. This is Pro Q3, just a high pass, low pass. Just getting rid of that unnecessary low end. Hey, what the heck? No. And then also getting rid of the unnecessary high end with the digital software, whether it be the Kemper or plugins. You kind of have this not very pleasant high end sound there, and I won't always low pass lead guitar. Sometimes the high end stuff is nice, but for this I wanted to get rid of it. And then a tiny boost here at like 2.5K. That's literally all I did for the EQ, but you'll notice a big difference when I turn it on. So off, on. You lose that high fizz. I mean, I don't know how well that comes through on, you know, if you're watching with your phone or something like that, but it definitely is a difference there. Not massive, but it's nice. I also compress this too. I do compress lead guitars fairly often. This is going to give a bit of a volume boost, but it's mostly just for evening out the tone in general, or the volume differences in general. Especially when you get lower notes, you'll end up having those pop out a ton, especially with a really heavily distorted tone like this. So the compression is going to control some of that. It's not really changing the tone much. That's just kind of giving a little bit of a volume boost and then also controlling some of the transients. And then the last thing I did plugin wise was this Brainworks refinement. And I actually use this more, looks like I use this more than I normally do. I normally don't go over a dB with this. This is essentially a harshness control. Actually, it is. It says harshness control right there. Just kind of tame some of those really harsh frequencies. So I did a little boost there, you know, in the 2.5K range, and sometimes the boosts up in the high range can make things a little bit more harsh. So this is what it's filtering out. Just those really unwanted frequencies. And the only other thing I did on this was delay and reverb. So the delay, I'll just turn the delay on. Off, on. Thank you, Rite of Passage Band. I'm like reading the chat on my phone. So the delay, you can tell, really widens out the sound a ton, and it seems like a lot, but I'll play it just very briefly in the mix. Once again, I don't want to get copyright strike, but right, you don't really even hear it that much in the context of the entire mix, so you can get away with quite a lot of reverb or delay. It just kind of thickens it and makes it wider. I don't know what delay. Let's see what delay settings I had on this. This is a Valhalla delay, which is kind of my go-to delay. Tape setting. Left, it's a stereo delay. Left side is quarter note. Right side is dotted quarter note. Decent amount of feedback. And then I also, afterwards, through that same EQ chain I had on before, or on the main track, I threw that after the delay and reverb, just to, so the delay was not doing those high and low frequencies as well. And I'm doing the delay and reverb as a send. They're not on the main track. That way I can really blend them in and out as much as I want, right? So I keep that main tone on the track and then have the delay and reverb as send. So if I want, I can turn the delay up a ton or bring it down, or I can automate how much is there. If I was mixing a song, maybe some parts I'd have a little more delay, or like a delay trail kind of go off. Reverb is lower in the mix. A lot of times with lead guitars I won't even do reverb. I'll just do delay. Same thing with like vocals if I'm mixing vocals, but a little bit of reverb sometimes is nice. This is a pretty long decay. What if I do, let's see, let me do it with just reverb. Turn it up. It's definitely way more subtle. It's almost barely there, hardly. It's just another way to kind of thicken up the tone and widen it out a little bit more. But with the delay and reverb both on, so I'll have them off first and then I'll turn them back on. I mean, that's really the secret sauce that makes all this stuff sound good. So when I'm playing just live through the chat here where my guitar is going direct, I have delay and reverb on because, anytime you're doing this kind of solo, it's super important. You can, I mean, oh yeah, last week I saw Dream Theater, like last Thursday, which is fun. I hadn't seen them in a long time, but like, it always kind of shocks me how much delay and reverb Petrucci has on his tone live, especially in their sort of later years. He's just got that completely soaked with reverb and delay. But it works really well in a live setting and kind of makes things sound a lot bigger and fuller since he's the only guitarist in the band. So that's just a look into how I did the mixing on this. So when I'm doing a cover like this, I want it to sound as good as possible, right? I could just do like raw camera audio, whatnot. That's a real sort of natural way to do a cover, which makes sense sometimes. But I like when I'm teaching a solo, especially to be able to talk about the solo in the context of the entire song. So if I don't have a good audio recording of the song, I can't really teach it that well because you're not going to hear how it interacts with the other instruments and all that kind of thing. So you can see I have the main track up here, and then these were the AI splits. So it's like drums, bass, vocals, which caught just a bunch of the guitar. So I just muted that. And then this other one. So listen to the other. It's basically just the rhythm guitars. And it'll sound weird on its own because I've EQ'd a ton of the like mids out of it, high mids. But when you throw the drums and bass in here, so this is essentially the backing track I was playing over. Right. And it kind of leaves a nice bed for the solo. And you can barely hear the original solo there. It's like way in the background. So when I put my solo over top and I make the volume of my solo a little bit louder, it just sounds like I'm playing over a backing track, basically. Right. So that's how that works. That's as much as I'm going to play. I don't want to get a copyright strike here. So I do have some processing on the bus here too, and a limiter at the end just to kind of boost the volume. This is my normal simple mastering chain, or master bus chain. Bus compressor, a couple EQs, and then saturation. So there you go. And this is essentially the method I took with all of these covers. Using AI, split out the different parts of the song, get the guitar solo down, record my cover, do a very similar mixing approach with all of my solos. Certain solos I needed to bring out different frequencies and whatnot, using different guitars or different tones, all of that, different kind of song. But this was the basic method for all of it, and it allowed me to have a really nice sounding cover. So I was recording this at the same time as I was filming, from the other direction. And then I'd synced it up in post in Final Cut Pro. So I'd export the finished mixed version of the cover, sync it up with the video, and you're good to go. Oh, and then I had to add the tab on screen too, which basically when I do that, actually that's maybe an interesting, I'm going to close this out. That's maybe an interesting thing to talk about too, because I don't know if people know how that works a lot when you're doing tabs on screen. What the heck? What I'll do is, I'm trying to show you here with this solo. I'll go to horizontal mode on the tab, and then I'll take a screenshot video of it, and I'll kind of get it in a spot where I can catch all of the notes. And then I will hit play on Guitar Pro while it's capturing the screen. And it's not going to capture the audio of Guitar Pro, it's just capturing the screen. And then I will throw that, because I have this tempo synced to what the actual song is, usually I can just throw this in on top of the video and get it in the right spot on the screen in the video. And then you'll have the tab on screen going along with it. It is important if you're going to do that, which, you know, it's not necessary to do. I do make sure that when I'm filming that, I am filming at an angle where there's enough space on the top of the screen, which is where I usually put the tab, that you can actually fit the tab in. If you film at an angle where like your guitar is taking up the entire screen, the tab will block out your guitar. So that is something to keep in mind if you want to do that kind of thing, which is fun. You know, it's definitely useful. And I think people like having the tabs on screen. I found my cover videos tend to do better when the tabs are on screen, because guitar players want to, you know, they want to learn the parts, obviously. Which makes total sense. I would too. I mean, if this kind of stuff was around, basically my channel is, I make the sorts of things that I want to see. Hold on. No, what? Something's weird happened there. I basically make the kind of content I want to see happen. So when I was 18, there was, you know, I don't think YouTube, maybe it was just starting, but there wasn't really anything like this channel, you know, out there, or any of the music channels that are out there now. I kind of was just figuring out all this stuff. I just felt like I was flying blind half the time when I was trying to learn how to write, especially how to play this kind of music. And so basically my channel is designed to help people figure out how to write this music that is very complex and confusing sometimes. Sharing what knowledge I have, maybe giving some people a head start on all of that. So along those lines, I mean, if you're watching, I do give private lessons. I give quite a few lessons actually to people that have found me on this channel. I really like doing that, giving composition lessons, guitar lessons, whatever it might be. So let's take a look at this Rush solo. I got to get through these solos a little bit faster. I'm kind of rambling, but I think it was interesting to talk about some of my tone choices. You know, you can see how I might actually mix this. For this song, I believe I was using this JCM 800. And this was one of the simpler solos to play for sure. It's Rush, right? It's not as shreddy as some of the other stuff, but this is a very cool solo. I've played a number of Alex Lifeson solos. Used to cover Limelight and Tom Sawyer in a band I was in, so I've done those solos a million times. Limelight's still one of my favorite Alex Lifeson solos. But this is cool too. It has like harmonics and kind of bluesy bends, some of the Alex Lifeson like pick fast, move your hand fast, somewhat out of sync. And this cool tapping. Right, those sorts of licks. I have a feeling my camera's going to shut off here in a second. Hold on. That should hopefully keep it going here. Just by like pressing it. I got to figure out how to keep it from shutting off on me. Still learning, but I think everything is looking and syncing up a lot better here overall, which is cool. I'm just watching my own live stream here, making sure everything is synced up well. I got to figure out how to keep it from. Yeah, there we go. Cool. We good there? So yeah, nothing like too fancy in this Rush solo. It's just fun to do something different. I want to make sure my channel ends up being more prog metal focused, it seems like, most of the time, just because of that's kind of the music I do, as well as most of the people who are following me tend to be on the younger side, or my age or younger. I'm not young anymore, but they tend to be more into prog metal, so that ends up being more of what I talk about. I think I had originally thought about this channel as being more prog rock too, not just prog metal. But I always try to throw in some prog rock where I can, and Rush is definitely one of those bands that I talk about a ton because they were one of my favorite bands ever. So this is a great solo. I really like that tapping idea. I talked about some crazier tapping licks with the Kigios The Source thing, but here you have bending and tapping, which is a really great technique. I think I probably first heard this with Van Halen, but ah. If you haven't done that kind of thing before, it's very cool, very fun to do. Yeah, nothing too crazy in this solo. So let's take a look at, next we got this Revocation solo, which I'm a massive fan of Revocation, one of my favorite, thrashy death metal bands. I think Dave Davison's playing, his lead playing is incredible. His riff writing is so interesting. A lot of jazz influence in here. I mean, there's some really weird, modal chord change stuff even in this solo. Talked about that Lydian dominant mode a little bit. Let me get a 5150 tone here. This is done a half step down in the actual song. I'm not going to tune down for any of this stuff today, so I just don't feel like doing it. Also, I think do I have it tabbed on a 7-string? I do. This is done on a 7-string, the rhythm parts. There's nothing on the low string in the solo, so it doesn't matter. I'm just going to do this in standard tuning, but so you have this, I have it labeled there C7 sharp 11. It's really just over a riff. That kind of sound. But the Lydian dominant mode is the fourth mode of melodic minor. So in this case, the fourth mode of G melodic minor is C Lydian dominant. That kind of sound. And the chord that really shows that is a dominant 7 chord with a sharp 11. As you can tell, it's a scale I'm somewhat familiar with. One of my favorite sort of fusion jazz modes to use. Works really well in this kind of music. I've used it myself in a number of different compositions and stuff. So you get some of this like E minor, straight up E minor. And then some of that Lydian dominant. A bunch of arpeggios in this solo too. Really like that lick. Open string stuff. Back to the Lydian dominant. And then a half diminished arpeggio. Very unusual in this kind of metal to see half diminished arpeggios. Very fun. It's a shape I use myself too. More unusual arpeggio things happening here too. some of this stuff here. That's going through 3 different modes. So B flat Lydian, and then halfway through it goes to like F sharp minor, F sharp natural minor, and then F Lydian, all back to back in one lick, which is very interesting. It's a really nice way to play through these changes, right? Right in the middle of this run, this sequence, which is a 6-note sequence, triplet, triplet. You could just take that down 1 scale, which is cool. But here he's goes from 1 scale to the next. So F sharp minor, F Lydian, right back to back. I had someone ask me in the comments today on the video I posted of all these solos, like, what scales do you use for this sort of thing? And my answer was, well, it depends. It depends on the song. It depends on the context of what's happening around it. So you have a solo like this Revocation solo, where you might be changing scales, in the middle of a lick, right? Or if it's more fusion jazz inspired, like some of these solos. But you also might have a solo like the one we'll talk about next, the Frost solo, that's just completely in like natural minor and never really goes outside of that ever, in a whole 2-minute solo. So it's all about the context of the song, and sometimes it makes sense to stay completely in one spot based on what's happening harmonically within the song. Other times you might want to mix a bunch of scales together and do a bunch of chromaticism and weird things like that. I think guitarists in general maybe think too much about scales as opposed to, focusing on melody, melody and also chord tones and all that other kind of things. It's not just about like playing the right scale. That can help, and it can get you out of a bind sometimes, and sometimes just running a scale like those big pentatonic scale string skipping things. I mean, they sound cool, right? It sounds cool to do that sort of thing. But when you're actually writing a solo, you want to think more about the overall structure of the solo and how everything's flowing and which notes are working the best over particular chords, as opposed to just thinking about scales. And this is kind of a good example of that. You have a real nice mixture of arpeggios and scales in here, and obviously kind of working over these changes. I really like this last lick too. It's fairly pentatonic in nature. There's the note B in there, but the rest of this is kind of out of A minor pentatonic. It's a really fun lick and very interesting, this triplet idea, right? Triplet, 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 triplet. That's a great lick to end the solo riff with. If you haven't checked out this entire song, Strange and Eternal by Revocation is off their latest album from, I think it's 2022, but it's my favorite song on the whole album, and I really like this part after the solo that happens. So if you haven't checked it out, I definitely recommend it. So let's move on to what was probably my favorite of these solos to play, and that's Blacklight Machine by Frost. If you have not checked out this band or this album, this is on the album Million Town from 2006, which, that's crazy. It's almost 20 years old at this point. Million Town is one of my favorite prog rock albums of all time. There's a big epic at the end of the album called Million Town. It's like a 26-minute long song. So cool. But this is another one of the long songs on the album, Blacklight Machine. I think it might be the second longest song on the album. It's like a 10-minute long song. But it has this big epic guitar solo in the middle, which was definitely my favorite of these to play, and really fun to cover, because it has some like cool flashy ideas in it, but it's really more about the melody and how it kind of builds to those big flashy moments. It feels like almost like a Pink Floyd type solo, these big long epic solos, but a Pink Floyd solo with some kind of shreddy licks in it here and there. stuff. So fun. There's a lot of repetition in here, a lot of melodic ideas that repeat. You get, right? Same thing again. Very nice. And it kind of just slowly ramps up. So each little section of the solo gets a little denser, a few more ideas here and there in each spot as it goes through, until you get to about halfway through the solo. You finally get like an actual big shreddy lick. And it's none of this fast stuff in the solo is particularly complicated, right? It's more for the effect of getting a big lick after having a bunch of melodic stuff happening. Almost pentatonic in nature, some of this stuff. There is some blues, a lot of blues kind of ideas here too. And then this lick, which ramps up slowly. Really like that sound of licks where it's like you kind of ramp into things. It's fun to do that. It feels that's something that feels a little more loose and live almost in some ways, like improvised. That's not something you hear in like written out solos that often, but it's a fun sound. You get these octaves too. There's so many massive bends in this. All of that really fun stuff, and it feels incredibly satisfying to cover this solo when you're actually doing it. Once you kind of once I had it all memorized and was able to play it all the way through, I felt, it's like one of those, you feel like a guitar god on top of a mountain playing this absolutely epic solo. It's kind of the same feeling I get when I play I used to cover Time by Pink Floyd, which I have a cover of that on my channel, but I used to cover Time in a cover band I was in. We did Time, and every time I played that solo, it just it's such a simple, slow solo, but something about it just made me feel so cool every time I played it. Make the guitar faces and all that. So that's Blacklight Machine by Frost. Very cool solo. Definitely recommend checking it out. So the next solo I covered was this Persephone solo. This is one that I picked out myself. Actually, Revocation was one of the other solos that I chose myself. I believe just Revocation and Frost. Oh no, Revocation and this Persephone solo were my choices. The rest were picked out on my Discord channels. But those were the two solos I wanted to do myself. Partially because I love this song, and I've actually I transcribed this I think a year or so ago, and I was planning on doing a cover of it at some point. So this ended up being the perfect opportunity to do that, to actually cover this song by doing this 10 solos in 10 days. Persephone is one of my favorite progressive death metal bands, and this is off of Spiritual Migration from 2013, which is one of my favorite progressive death metal albums. Very cool. It's a very dense, crazy album. If you listen to this solo or my cover of it, you'll know you'll get an idea of what this solo is like, or this album's like. Just tons of notes. This is definitely the most challenging of these solos to play, with all of the big shreddy ideas. A lot of diminished stuff in here. Big arpeggio licks. Very classically inspired sequences in here too. There's a lot of big sweeps, classic scale runs, and some of these classical ideas in there as well. And this is one where I recorded two different angles for different parts of the solo, because it kind of jumps back and forth between these different parts and they sort of blend into each other. Like this is a very classically inspired section here. It's this pedal point lick. And that is straight up like Baroque era classical music, like Bach, right? I learned a lot of those sorts of licks actually playing Symphony X stuff. All this pedal point stuff. All those diminished licks. Very fun to do. And then you have this open string lick, which is probably my favorite part of this whole song. We have the... Once again, it's been a while since I've done this. All of that. Very fun, very fun. And the last solo, the last part of this solo was probably the trickiest part of this entire 10 solos in 10 days for me to cover. There's a lot of really crazy stuff in here. It's just really fast. Like these 16th note triplets at 150 beats per minute, right? How fast is that? Let's see. Right? Very quick. It's a simple pattern. Oh, by the way, they're down tune a full step on this, so I'm just doing it in standard. Simple pattern, but hard to execute at that speed. Yeah. Originally, I thought this was picked, and so for a while I was practicing it with picking. Really good picking exercise. But I watched a live video and he was tapping it, so you could use it as a picking exercise, but... Lots of sweeping, lots more of these pedal point ideas. But really, really fun. There's some really interesting kind of time signature stuff too. Some measures of 5/4 and 3/4. And then this weird tempo change right at the end. Definitely a really challenging solo, but one that was quite fun to do. So what do we got next? We got to do the Fujia solo. There it is. This was one that was requested to me. It's Dreamless by Fujia, which is a band that I really enjoy. It's not one that a band that I've listened to like a ton, but I really enjoy the things I have checked out from Fujia, and this song is really cool. This first solo is one of my favorites to play out of all these 10. This fusion, really fusion inspired solo. Yeah. Very fun licks. Some of these, which I talked about in the lesson. It's over like a C major 7 chord, but you're doing a B minor pentatonic. I did actually check out the new Fujia single. I only listened to it once, so I haven't really have formed much of an opinion on it. I really enjoyed the first listen of it. I thought it was cool. There's some clean singing in there, which they didn't used to do as much earlier, or at all, I'm not sure. But I did genuinely enjoy it. I like their sound. They have a very cool, specific sound, It's technical and impressive to listen to, but it's also very atmospheric. I really like Scott's lead playing, although he didn't do either of the solos on Dreamless, but really like his lead playing, where it's like really drenched in delay and reverb, and he's doing a lot of bar work and stuff, which there's a lot of that in this solo too. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, like the over a C major 7, you can play B minor pentatonic, and you'll get a lot of those extensions. I think maybe I heard of this technique originally from Tosin Abasi in a video from like, I don't know, 10 years ago at this point, maybe even longer. But he's mentioned like over a major 7 chord, you play the minor pentatonic built off the 7th, and that'll give you, it's essentially a Lydian sound, but you'll hit all of the extensions. So you get the 9th, 7th, would that be over C? The 6th or 13th, and then you get the sharp 11. So it's basically all the extensions of a C major 7 sharp 11. Maybe we can demonstrate it better if I open string. So I'll do E, and I'll play D sharp minor pentatonic. Right, you can hear that Lydian sound happening as I play the pentatonic. And Timon does a ton of that in this solo. Yeah, Cynic. There's actually quite a few bands. If you haven't listened to Cynic, in fact, actually, Timon, the guitarist who played this guest solo on Dreamless, played in Cynic for a while. Cynic is actually incredibly influential to a ton of bands in the modern progressive metal scene, because Cynic was kind of an early adopter of a lot of this, I don't know, how do you even describe it, like fusion-inspired, really more atmospheric kind of stuff. Focus by Cynic is an album that was way ahead of its time. I've thought about doing an analysis on some Cynic stuff. I think it's probably worth doing. One of my favorite albums from the 2010s was Language by the Contortionists, which is very, very heavily Cynic influenced. But yeah, a lot of the Fallujah stuff, and also Rivers of Nile too. That kind of prog metal, extreme prog metal, but with some really interesting atmospheric and fusion influences. That's all very Cynic inspired. So yeah, definitely interesting stuff. And yeah, I like, as I said, maybe we need to go over some stuff from them to listen. Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to think of I've never actually learned any Cynic songs, but it is, they are a super important band in this genre. One I probably should cover. It kind of touches on a different area of prog that I maybe don't talk about as much on this channel. I am planning on doing an analysis video of something from Language by the Contortionists at some point, because that was an album I really, really loved and listened to a ton when it first came out. This solo, as I mentioned, one of my favorites. I really like these kind of fusion licks here, like this whole chromatic sort of deal. That is really fun. You're basically filling in the gaps. That's my sort of cheating fusion playing, and that's what I always tell people is like, play scale, could be pentatonic, major, minor, whatever, and just fill in all of the gaps with chromatic notes. So if you have like, this is melodic minor. So I'm playing melodic minor and I'm just 3/4 pursuing shapes, and I'm filling in gaps with chromaticism, and I'll mix that in with a few arpeggios. And you can start to sound a little bit like a fusion player without having to think about it too much. Right, that kind of thing. But play better than that. That's essentially what's happening here. And you have these big string skipped. Very fun. There's a massive tapping lick in the second solo, which I guess was done by a former guitarist who's not even in Fallujah anymore. But this was probably one of the trickiest licks of all of these 10 solos. Yes, that's basically what you do. Play the scale, play all the notes in between. The simplest way to do that, I guess back to that same thing, is pentatonic, because the pentatonic lends itself to filling in the gaps really easily. So. And if you play fast enough and you end on good notes, you can almost do anything. That's it. That's how you fake playing fusion. Just do chromaticism. It works well as long as you can. That's all about resolving it. If you don't resolve it properly, then it never really works. But this is one I'd have to memorize to play properly. There it is. It is a monster lick. I definitely had to spend quite a bit of time getting that one down. There we go. That was a decent, slower take of it. Yeah. That's close. Close enough. Close enough for jazz. Anyway, Dreamless solo, very cool. The next one I covered was Windowpane by Opeth, and a lot of this was I wanted a much simpler solo in here. And there's a couple of simpler solos. The Rush solo is definitely simpler, and even the Frost one is not quite as crazy. But it was nice to have kind of a breather. I wanted some variety with these solos. So Windowpane was that. I mean, this is a great solo to tackle if you're maybe newer to playing lead guitar, especially in this style of music. There's nothing really crazy here to play, but it's a good study in how to construct a solo and how to weave together some simple ideas that sound really nice. And really, not much to go over here. Nothing too particularly interesting from a sort of guitar perspective. What's really nice about this solo is that it fits so well in the context of the song and in the context of, the whole band. And Opeth does a really good job of all of these simple kind of solos. They have quite a few of them that are really nice. So I guess that would lead to solo 9, which is Misericordiae. I think that's how you say it. I don't know. Maybe not. By Obliviscaris, which was one of my favorite ones to cover. And a lot of people didn't even know about this band or this solo specifically until I covered it. So I got quite a few comments of like, man, this solo is so cool. And they're right. It is very cool. This is a very interesting solo. Once again, I think another one of my favorites to play that is just unusual. There's a lot of stuff in here that you wouldn't expect to hear. A lot of these little minor bends. All of those quarter step, very exotic sounding bends, quote unquote. This solo has like everything. I guess the one thing it doesn't have is like a ton of fast alternate picking licks. I don't know if Benjamin the guitarist does a ton of that. I can't think of too much from Obliviscaris, but besides that, it has everything. It has like big tapping licks, big legato runs, some weird sweeping licks, arpeggios, weird bends, and whammy bar work, harmonics. It's all over the place as far as techniques go, but done in a really clever way that builds nicely. This first half of the solo is filled with all of these interesting phrases and bends where you have some weird jumps here and there, all that kind of stuff. And then this lick here, this whole section here, which is really interesting. You remember it? All of that, very fun, and that kicks into the second half of the solo, which you start to get some actual big licks in here. Oh, lost my camera again. As I said, I need to figure that out. Well, we'll be done before... Am I back up yet? Where am I? Give me a second. Where'd I go? There I am. Back up. We'll be done before it shuts off again. I thought I had my camera set to not shut off at all. It must be on like a 30-minute auto shut off would be my guess. Yeah, this is a very fun one. The legato runs are weird. I think especially this first one that you mentioned there, where you have like chromaticism. Some of these shapes are ones I use myself fairly often. These sevens patterns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that wasn't too hard. I think once you get into that, it works okay. It's a very satisfying run once you get it. Ah! As I mess it up. And then it's straight into an arpeggio. These harmonics are kind of hard to hit. It's pinch harmonics. They're actually... Then like, what would be the 31st fret? Ah. Gotta find it. This might be the most interesting lick from the whole solo. This tapped harmonics thing, which we were just talking about Fujia a couple solos ago. It's something they do a lot in riffs. I've never gotten really great at this, but tap, hammer out from nowhere with your left hand, and then tap a harmonic an octave higher. You can do like octaves, for example. There's a lot of tracking involved with this. So you essentially have this left hand pattern, and then you do the octave tapping. I had to basically memorize the left hand fingering because I can only look at one hand as I'm doing this. So I memorized the left hand fingering. That way I could watch the tap note as I worked up from there. But this whole next couple of measures here where you string all these different techniques together was definitely tricky to put together. Scale around. More legato. And then you got this big monster tapping lick. Kind of a similar string skipped idea that I was talking about with the Kigios The Source solo. This is done more as octaves, though, as opposed to in one position. So you can do these string skip tappings, in one position. But you can also take them up in octaves. So I can take a shape and do it up one octave at a time. That kind of sound. Very interesting, and you can sequence that, and that's essentially what happens in this whole entire tapping lick. I'm not even going to try to play it right now, but I didn't even do it that cleanly in my final cover. That sort of thing. That last final lick is really just that idea. Same shape down an octave. He doesn't do the tap that high, but Anyway, fun sound. Something I'll do myself occasionally too, these sort of octave repeating shapes. But this is a great solo, very interesting. And then the last solos I covered were from Autotheist by the Faceless, which I really liked this album when it first came out in 2012. I mean, it's still a great album. This song in particular, this three-piece three-movement set of songs, the Autotheist, is very good. The rest of the album is kind of hit and miss for me, but I really like these songs, and I think these solos are kind of the highlight of this second part at the end. Really big melodic solos. Very interesting for tech death to have such kind of moving, melodic solos. These are done in drop C. I'm not going to drop tune down because I don't feel like doing that right now. There's some really interesting ideas, especially in the second solo and Wes's solo. Wes Houch, one of my favorite metal guitarists, has very cool sound. The stuff in Michael Keene's solo is, if you've learned any Faceless solos, I've learned a couple, I've given lessons to a few people on Faceless solos. He ends up doing a lot of the same kind of things. He's got like a couple of fast licks. One of them is this particular pattern that starts off the solo. It's one he does all the time. You can do it in any key. And the other one he does in this solo is basically a Paul Gilbert 6-note. So that's another lick you'll see. He actually does it earlier in the solo too. So Michael Keene has a couple of these fast licks that he uses here and there. But it's really well constructed, this whole first solo. It just doesn't really have anything maybe particularly interesting. It does have the, like, really crazy high harmonic. But you got to have enough gain to make that work. You have to hit it really strong, too. So it's 17th fret harmonic. Yeah. Michael doing Keene things. Well, he's done lots of other things, particularly drugs in the past. Actually, my band, A Sense of Gravity, when was it? 2018? We actually were a local opener for the Faceless for one of their shows at that time. I think at that point they weren't. Yeah, I mean it's kind of a shame. Well, the harmonic's hard to hit because it's not a strong harmonic. Your strong harmonics on guitar are 5, 7, 12. Other ones are harder to hit, like 4, 3. They actually did play that show. There was some weird technical stuff, if I remember correctly, that they had, but they did play. But I think at that point he was pretty drugged out of his mind, so it was a little bit of a weird show. And I don't even think they had a bass player. I think the bass was on tracks, if I remember correctly. I wish I could have seen them, the Faceless, on this Autotheist tour. I think that was like the prime version of the band, where you had Alex Rudinger on drums and Wes playing guitar, and then Evan Brewer playing bass. But yeah, I mean, harmonics and whammy bars, that's always a good sound. My Joe Satriani squeals. There we go. But yeah, it's really fun to play that particular part if you can get the harmonic. Yeah, I mean, I hope that he's doing well and that he's back to writing, because Planetary Duality and Autotheism are two of the best tech death albums. He has a very cool sound to his writing. I really, really like both those albums a ton, and hopefully he can get himself back in order to make some more music, because that'd be great. I'd love to hear some more Faceless at some point. But yeah, I mean, these solos are awesome. And the second solo, I think Wes's solo in particular, is really cool. There's some very, very interesting licks in here. I will say one thing about that Michael Keane solo is like, yeah, I mean, all 4 albums are good. I think those 2 for me, that's probably because those are the 2 that I've listened to the most. Yeah, he's definitely a good influence to have for sure. I've checked out. I mean, I've taken some influence, from the Faceless myself. I had like a big tech death phase for a while in like 2016, 2017. I still enjoy listening to tech death every once in a while. And I like kind of bringing some of those influences in occasionally into the more proggy stuff. But yes. Welcome. That makes sense. I appreciate it. I appreciate people that comment. It makes it a little easier for me to feel like I'm just talking to the void half the time here. I know there's people watching because I can see it, but when people, comment, it does help. I mean, yeah, my Discord channel is just full of prog nerds. That's kind of the idea. Yeah, I forgot Justin McKinney was, I think maybe he was in the band at the time where we opened for them. And he's in, what's the band? I can't remember. Zenith Passage, which is very, very good. Their latest album is very good. More tech death. I kind of have to be in the mood for tech death now. But every once in a while I'll be like, yeah, I need to listen to like 15 minutes of tech death every once in a while. So for myself, sometimes I'll throw just like snippets of tech death inspired stuff in my own music. I think it's fun. Adds there's an extra sort of level of interest there, and it's kind of like a genre that's adjacent to prog metal, if not exactly in line with prog metal all the time. So this is, I guess, the last solo we're looking at here. This autotheist movement 2 by Wes. This lick is really interesting. I talked about all these in my lesson, but where it kind of slides up. All of that. Some like pentatonic bluesy runs, and then some of these pedal point things. Oh, I'm not in drop tuning, so I don't know. I won't be able to play those faster licks, but that's fine. You won't have to see me struggle through them. Let's see. Yeah, I think it was the Becoming lineup because that was the album they had just released before they played there. I've opened for, I mean, it's funny, like we were the local opener, so a local opener doesn't get, no one shows up to the show until the local opener's already done. So no one even saw us. But we opened for the Faceless. We opened for Leprous. That was my favorite one that we did. And we also opened for Obliviscaris, which is another band I just talked about. So there's my claim to fame. Yeah, and I think it's pretty obvious that it's 2 different guitarists. Right, and if you listen, like the style is very different between the 2 guitarists and the way they're playing. Wes has a lot of more interesting influences in his playing. You can hear a lot of that in some of these arpeggios, even this kind of chromatic stuff. Right. That's not the sort of thing that Michael Keane would ever do, really. Or these big arpeggios. I still have to change the fingering, but all of that chromatic stuff, very unusual in this tech death sort of music. You hear a lot more of, I think maybe because I'm thinking of like some of the stuff from those, you hear a lot more of that kind of stuff in tech death, where it's more classic shredding ideas, which is fun. I love doing all of it. But you don't necessarily hear these extended arpeggios as much in tech death, so it's kind of fun to hear that kind of sound. I'm just practicing my sweeping. It's funny, I was listening to I haven't listened to Yngwie Malmsteen in a long time, but I was listening to some Yngwie Malmsteen last night just because, I don't know, it's like nostalgic for me to listen to Yngwie. And I was like, oh man, some of this stuff is so crazy. I totally forgot that he was doing this kind of stuff in the like early 80s. All of the wild harmonic minor stuff. But it's fun, you know, there's the classic shred stuff that's like I cut my teeth on. And with my Sean Lane licks there. All right, I've been streaming for a long time. It's probably about time to be done. I gotta go. It's Friday night, so I gotta get some dinner and whatnot. Let's see. Let's take a look here. Yeah, I'm at an hour and 40 minutes. Any last questions for me? Let me know. We had a few people here chatting. I appreciate those of you who are here checking it out. And if you're watching this after the fact, you can send me an email. You can send me an email to morganwickmusic@gmail.com. And if you want, I can... Who was cocky? Sean Lane? Curtis jumps in at the last second. Thanks, Curtis, for jumping in at the last second. Curtis is someone I actually know in person. So. I wonder if you must be talking about Sean Lane. I mean, if you're talking about Sean Lane, he had a right to be cocky because this crazy man. I don't have big enough hands for doing the really crazy Sean Lane stuff. Let me do my close-up camera here. So the way to fake the Sean Lane is just do like symmetrical. So I'm doing like a diminished shape. And I'll skip strings. Oh, Malmsteen. Yeah, no, that's right. You're talking about Malmsteen. Actually, Lane was not super cocky from the videos I saw of him, which was maybe why I was confused by your comment. But yes, no, Malmsteen is like the most arrogant man that exists, which is funny now because I think back in the day, like if you watch videos of Malmsteen from like the 84, 85, it's crazy the stuff that he was doing, and he was super clean and awesome. But now if you watch Malmsteen play live, it's like super messy and sloppy, but he's still just as arrogant, which is really funny. Let's see. Oh, I don't know who that is. Connor McCorn. I'll have to check him out. What is band is he in? Zerath. Okay, I'm not familiar with him. I'll have to check him out. But yeah, that Sean Lane kind of stuff is really fun. If you, I mean, he would never do this, but you can even add and tap in there. The big Sean Lane one would be to do like a augmented shape. So it's like 4 frets between each finger, which for my small hands is not a great shape. Just sounds absolutely wild. I guess I could tap that probably, but some of these things I'll do like an octave above. Anyway, that's stuff that you can't use that often in solos. I've maybe used a little bit here and there. You can do the diminished. I guess the other Sean Lane thing is to actually do instead of doing it symmetrically, do a diminished in key. That kind of thing. Right. That's actually something that actually wasn't too bad. That hurt your hand so bad, though. I haven't done those in a long time. Or like a pick 'em too if you really want to do something. Yeah, you can do that kind of stuff with whole tone scales too. Play it on bass? I'd have to plug my bass in. I'm not really set up to do that. But I could probably tap if I couldn't stretch out, obviously. I could tap. I can't even do that kind of thing. You reach a certain point down here where it's too much of a stretch. I can only really do it like 7th fret and higher, really, for some of that kind of thing. You could octave move it. One of my favorite, we're just talking about crazy weird licks now. One of my favorite whole tone ones is you can skip. So basically playing low E, D, and high E. And because it's symmetrical, you can kind of just move it around at will. The symmetrical sounds are fun, and they lend themselves to a lot of very interesting sounds that are somewhat easy to play. Yeah, so I mean that's not stuff I use a ton in my own music. I mean occasionally I'll throw in like a whole tone run or a diminished scale run here and there for a different sort of effect. But anyway, cool. Well, thanks for us use drop C. No, I'm actually not in drop C. I didn't drop down for the Faceless because I was covering all these other. I was talking about all these other solos, which most of them were in standard. So I'm just was playing it in standard tuning. I don't. My own music is all in standard on a 6, and then if I'm on a 7 string, it's drop A, and then if it's 8 string, I do a low E below that. Sometimes I'll play in like drop D if I'm on a 6 string. But for me, I'm staying in standard all the time because a lot of what I do outside of playing prog and stuff is I play in cover bands and do session work and stuff like that. So it's easier for me to stay in standard. And if I want the lower notes, I'll just go to my 7 string instead of down tuning. So I don't have like a separate guitar set up to down tune. So for some of these solos, I had to down tune. Like for the Revocation one, it was a half step down to just down tune my 7 string. And also for the Faceless, I just tuned this guitar down to drop C. The strings were a little loose, but it worked okay for the solo. But it wasn't necessary for me to kind of stay in drop C. I get it though. Drop tunings are really fun, and every time I play in drop C, I'm like, yeah, this is super fun, and I feel like I'm in a metalcore band. I just not something I've ever done because of all the other stuff I do when I was at school playing in jazz band or playing in classic rock cover bands. I needed to be in standard tuning, so I've just kind of stayed in standard tuning for most of my own stuff. It's just easier that way. And then the theory works out better too. I can talk about the theory as it relates to standard tuning. That was one of the weirdest things about some of these solos, if they were dropped, was talking about the theory in relation to... Actually, I'm going to hold on. I have a feeling my camera's about to shut off. Oh, hell, someone else here. You know what? There's a number of people here. I'll just kind of like chat randomly for a few minutes. Let's see, what time is it? 1:45? I've been on for Oh no, we got autofocus on? Oh, it went away. Okay, good. Once again, I'm kind of messing with my new camera. I'll stay on till we get to about 2 hours, then I'll get off. Yeah, go listen to Colors 2 if you haven't. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, BT Bam, one of my favorite bands. Yeah, that's right. I did talk about some BT Bam riffs. I don't remember how to play any of those. I did find some of that stuff really interesting, some of the BT Bam stuff, because you have like a lot of inverted power chords. And then as well as like some of those tritone power chords. You know what? I bet I have those tabbed out somewhere. Let me see if I can find them. White Walls. I think I agree. Automata, is that what how you call them? Those were not my favorites either. Those two albums, they're good. But I really liked Coma Ecliptic. I like Coma Ecliptic. And I really like Colors too. So, hey, here we go. I got these White Walls riffs. Oh, I got to put it up on screen. Hold on. Yeah, and I think when you're on a 6-string, these inverted power chords. Originally, the first place I probably ever saw those was I don't remember how to play now. Pull Me Under by Dream Theater, right? You get those inverted power chords. Yeah, this riff is cool. Why is it split across 2 pages? I'm going to make it viewable for myself here. These are all from White Walls. So you have like the inverted power chords. Inverted power chords, I actually use them on 7 strings sometimes too, but it's more something I'll do with 6 strings so you can kind of get that heaviness. Actually, I guess the final riff from my song Escape Velocity is like this breakdown. It's entirely like inverted power chord because it's E flat and I'm in standard tuning. So it sounds real weak without it. So I do an inverted power chord. And then the bass does E flat underneath. So you kind of get a little bit of a heavier sound. Anyway, I am not in BT Bam tuning, obviously. They're a step and a half down. Let's do this. Let's see. It's been a while since I've done this. Normal power chord, inverted, inverted, normal, inverted. Then you get these. Actually, let's get a rhythm sound here. Yeah, very weird stuff. Ah. And then you have the tritone. Very fun riff. That was pretty good sight reading, actually. I haven't played this in years. I did that BT Bam analysis, like... Yeah, get rid of the lead tone. No delay on that. I never tell people to listen to Colors first with BT Bam unless they're okay with death metal. Yeah, of course everyone can hear that song in their head as they play it. If someone who is not into harsh vocals and death metal, which are a lot of people who are into prog, don't like the heavy stuff, which I totally get. That was me for a long time. Somehow Colors was the first album with harsh vocals that I really fell in love with. But it is a pretty abrasive album throughout. I listened to the whole thing recently, and I was like, this is actually super heavy and pretty dissonant for a lot of it. I mean, there's those really beautiful moments, and I think that's what I kind of fell in love with originally, but not an album that I would recommend to someone who doesn't like harsh vocals. I'd probably have them listen to like Coma Ecliptic, for example. That would be the best one because it has the most clean singing, right, and the least amount of harsh vocals. Maybe even Colors 2, which has a lot of variety. Or even like parts of the Great Misdirect is probably more accessible than Colors. But if someone's able to get into the harsh vocals, then they should definitely listen to Colors because it's a classic, right? One of the best progressive metal albums ever. It was in my list of top 10 albums of all time, and it's still there for sure. It's a great album, and it's definitely aged super well. As I've gotten older, it's still good. I noticed some production things on it now that it's aged a little bit more, but it still sounds great overall. Coma Ecliptic actually is one of my go-to albums for like mix referencing. I think that has one of the best mixes for a prog metal album. It's Jens Bogren, so it makes sense, but that album just has Colors 2 as well, but Coma Ecliptic has such a great mix. It sounds so good. Great Misdirect. If you haven't listened to it for a while, go back and listen to it. I think that one is aged for me maybe better than any of the other ones. It's one of my favorite BT Bam albums. There's some really great stuff on there. Swim to the Moon is obviously a classic. Oh man. Oh, Shogun era Trivium. Shogun is actually a great album. That's my favorite Trivium album. I was never a massive Trivium fan, but that album's great. I'm just looking over these riffs now. Oh yeah, this final riff. Oh look, we were just talking about the whole tone scale. I've never seen Swim to the Moon live. I did catch them on their last tour. I didn't get to see the night where they played Colors, but I watched them play Colors 2 straight through, which was great. It's a straight up whole tone scale. It's that lick in White Walls. Huh? So cool. I think I must have the Selkies solo tabbed out too, since I've covered that. I'm curious to see how it is without Dusty in the band as well myself. The thing is, I don't know how much Dusty actually does writing wise. I'm assuming quite a bit, but I don't know. You know, if it's something where he's not doing the majority of the writing, then, you know, maybe it'll be okay and you won't lose any of that. But if he's, you know, if Dusty's written a ton of the riffs, which I suspect he maybe has in some cases, then that could definitely change their sound a lot. I mean, they played great live. It was an awesome show when I saw them. Super tight, and the guy they had filling in was really good, but I just don't know. We'll see. It'll be interesting. I hate, like, just because I'm like a music prog nerd, I hate it when there's mosh pits at prog shows. Like at the Colors 2 show I was at actually last year, I was just sitting there enjoying the music. All of a sudden some guy just like nailed me from the side and pushed me like 10 feet over. I almost fell over. And I was like, come on, seriously, dude. Like I'm trying to watch these guys play this awesome album. I just want to watch them play. Like I don't want to be involved in a mosh pit. I suppose some people just want to mosh, but they should go to like, you know, a death metal show or something instead of going to a rock metal show. I get it though. People want to let out their rage. If they're gonna do it in a mosh pit, that's better than doing it in real life, I suppose. But yeah, that was not a lot of fun. The thing was, I wasn't even that close to the front or the center. I was actually kind of back a ways, but I just was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Some guy really wanted to start a mosh pit, and I was his victim up front. Yeah, the Selkies solo. This is in their tuning. But yeah, like this is a lot of people's like first introduction to playing sweeps. Right, doing the... I haven't done these in so long. Back to the lead sound. Except for to do it in the actual... Yeah. Probably doing that too fast. Right. All that stuff. What's the next part? I'm transposing this as I'm looking at it. Oh wait, no, it goes up. Thank you. I found a sight reading as I play it. There you go. It's a diminished arpeggio. This is a weird one. Yeah. Yeah, gosh. I don't know if this would be the first sweeping song I'd recommend. There's like there's got to be some easier sweeping solos that you could do before trying to tackle some of these bigger sweeps. But there's a couple of there's some really classic sweeping shapes in here. Like typically, I recommend starting with 3-string sweeps first. There's a pattern I teach everybody at first. It's this one. So down, 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 up, up, up. Actually, here we go. I'm going to give everyone a guitar lesson here. Off the Where is it? This is my sweeping basics lesson that I give to students. It's this first lick here, because it's actually a pure sweeping lick. Your classic 3-string sweeps, like the Yngwie Mousing sweeps, they're actually only one-way sweeps because you're only going down and not sweeping back up. Those. But that shape there is a 2-way sweeping lick, so down, 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 up, 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 and you can kind of repeat it. There's also the like John Petrucci one from Rock Discipline where it's this sort of symmetrical shape. That one. Oh, that reminds me of these. Like symmetrical sweeps. Oh man, I need to get these cleaner because they sound so awesome. It's been a while since I've done this. Yeah, if you're gonna start with sweeping, you got to do some, do some Malmsteen or something, some kind of early classic sweeping stuff. Don't try to bite off more than you can chew. But that's probably like the sweeping lick I start people on. That one, and then you can kind of play through the different arpeggio inversions and stack on more strings as you go. I like doing exercises like these too, where you're playing through an actual chord progression. Right, that kind of thing. You can make more interesting chord progressions than that. Right, and then you can, once you kind of get that down, you can do 5-string versions of it, right? Let me pull up. It's funny, I don't do that kind of stuff. Not nearly as much as I used to. The like triad shapes. I do a lot more of these 7th arpeggios. You get a taste of what I do in some of my guitar lessons, but these sort of shapes where you have 7th arpeggios, considerably more interesting, I think, than playing triads. So I have the different sort of 7th arpeggios here. You can do these all back to back. Sound really nice. So I'll do major 7, dominant, minor 7, half diminished, fully diminished. If I string them all back to back. Right. They sound really cool. And I would practice those through a scale. Like I have all of them within the major scale. So C major. These are all the arpeggios that come from the key. Do the major 7, same root note into minor 7. So major 7. Right, major 7. Yeah, that works cool. That works well. You could do... Now, what I really like about these 7th shapes, and this is what I talk about with a lot of people, is they're much easier to sequence in more interesting ways. So I can do... Here's a lick here with a minor 7 that I might actually play where I'm... Right? That kind of thing sounds more interesting to me, and I could do it with like a major 9. So that kind of stuff sounds really cool. And that to me sounds more interesting than... See, here's harmonic minor arpeggios. You get some weird ones. Like this major 7, sharp 5. Very mysterious sounding. Sorry, I'm getting a text here. I'm gonna have to leave here in a minute. I got to get... Oh, there's my text on screen. Sci-fi, yeah. Anyway, maybe I'll do maybe I can do like a sweeping specific live stream. Suddenly a 5/4 measure. Yeah, it's because Prog. Hashtag Prog. No, because it lines up with the pattern. That's where you add like notes inside of the arpeggio, like scale tones. That's what it sounds. I love those big, interesting arpeggios. You can do like. Okay. All right. Now I've got to go. I'll jump on live some other time and do maybe I'll do an arpeggio live stream. All right, guitar amp going off. All right, thank you. I decided to stick around because there's some people here, but thank you for chatting. If you enjoyed this, let me know. I'll do some more live streaming here at some point. I got to get going. My wife needs help with my children. I have 3 children, by the way, so I got to go be an adult here. But thank you.